Jablam Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Bojarinov. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98, and I am with...
My name is Conner Rowntree. You can find me on Twitter at SportsWithTree.
And of course, you can find both of us on Twitter at Jablam Hockey and on our website. Hopefully it's back up in a few days, jablamhockey.com. That's right, folks. Connor and I are back, and we're just going to focus on making the podcast better. We're going to push away the YouTube, and you know what? I don't know. I don't think it was working. How did you feel about that, Connor?
No, it definitely was not working. Now we can focus on providing you, our audience, with better hockey knowledge because we got more time to focus on stats than we do setting up cameras and whatnot.
Yeah. We were contemplating doing some crazy segments. Did you get some of those segments I was emailing about, Connor?
Yep. There was. You're getting real creative here, Peter. Real creative. Why don't you send a little teaser out?
Well, I'm just saying some of the segments we were thinking about doing on YouTube were something to do with like comedy bits and with nicknames and stuff. So we might do some nickname stuff later on in the show. But this is our special trade deadline episode. That's why we're back, and that's why we're going to do this whole thing in the rush to the playoffs. So before we get into trading now, not trending now, trading now, what else do we have this episode? Well, we're going to be doing a Olympic review and talk a little bit our men's and females, women hockey teams that Canada was competing with. Of course, we'll also do at the end of the show, so stay tuned for that, our top 10 list Connor made, and we might throw in some other names because we have talked about some in our main segments with trading deadline talk with guys from the Sabres. We have Chad DeDominicis talking Sabres. We have Clark talking Red Wings. We have Ian Boisvert talking Montreal Habs. And of course, we have Louis Pinon talking some Coyotes. And all those players that are, could get traded at this big trade deadline. But first, trading now.
There's going to be some moves this year.
Yeah. So what is the first trade we want to talk about that happened about a week or so ago?
Yeah, well, it's Dion Phaneuf. As you know, he was in Maple Leaf for a while. So let's keep everyone updated here in Toronto. So Dion Phaneuf and Nate Thompson, they head to LA in return for Nick Shore and Marian Gaborik, pardon me. Personally, I think Los Angeles wins this deal because Dion Phaneuf, he's been called a pylon. He's been called many things on the ice, but off the ice, he's still a great leadership. He took the time to personally thank every single member of the media in Ottawa, just proving that he is a good guy. Whereas Marian Gaborik, the guy was drinking beers on live TV on HBO for the NHL 24/7 back when he was on the Rangers. So I don't really think you're getting, when it comes to the person, not the player on the ice, the person, I think the Kings definitely win that locker room battle.
Well, I don't know about you, but Gaborik drinking beers and getting ready to play some hockey sounds more intriguing to me, and I want to see more of that player. But yeah, so far, I don't know. It was pretty crazy because the trade happened, and then they both scored the next game for their new organizations. And I don't know, yeah, Phaneuf is still looking pretty decent for the Kings so far.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just, for me, it comes down, the big thing about this trade is, what will Ottawa get in Nick Shore? Can he return to his days of junior, of playing big, bruising bodies and burying pucks? He hasn't been able to translate that game to the NHL. If he can do that for Ottawa, I think this trade works out both ways very nicely. Gaborik's had 3 slow years since he actually hit a 25-goal mark, so I don't really think that Gaborik has enough in the tank as an older player. But as you said, I think LA and Phaneuf could be a good match.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. A nice small trade with the Maple Leafs. They moved Nikita Shoshnikov before his whole contract scenario ends, and they acquire a 4th-round pick for him. With all the potential and the prospects that the Leafs have, there just really wasn't much room for Shoshnikov, I guess.
No, there certainly wasn't. And especially because you had guys like Lebo who also got moved to Las Vegas. And all those younger players like Kapanen has come up, and he's been playing really, really well. He's been playing solid hockey like he did in the playoffs last year. So one of those guys, or two of those guys, maybe even three, had to get moved, and it's good to see that they got some return value. A fourth-round pick from St. Louis certainly isn't the end of the world.
Yeah, and I think if the Blues have some room there, maybe Shoshikov can grow, and he's a bit more suitable, I would say, to the Blues' playing style.
Yeah, well, exactly. He's a bigger kid, but he can still shoot the puck, which would really make him fit in with a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko quite nicely. So it could be the best of both worlds for this trade, both for the player and for both organizations.
Yeah. All right. We mentioned a couple of them, and you stay tuned with our interviews. Mrazek, of course, goes to Philly for some conditional picks to the Wings. But a decent one, I thought was pretty decent, was the Bruins getting Nick Holden for the Rangers for Rob O'Gara and a third-round pick.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this one, Peter. For the Rangers' standpoint, I think Nick Holden is a solid player. Obviously, the contract comes into play, and he's worth more than Rob O'Gara is present day. So the third-round pick looks nice. I figured giving up on a young defenseman like Nick Holden, especially to a team not in the same division but the same conference, I don't really like the trade. I think Nick Holden is going to have a great career with the Boston Bruins if he stays there long enough, and I really like his style of play.
Yeah, I think maybe the Rangers could have got a little bit more for Holden, but
yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're changing. I think they're gonna do a bit of a rebuild now in New York, and you know what? I think they're fine with what they're getting, and maybe there wasn't an avenue to be acquiring more for Holden. I'm guessing. It seems.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was at the game last night here in Montreal between the Rangers and the Canadiens, and the whole New York Rangers team. You can tell they were playing all their younger guys. McDonough, they say he has an upper body injury. He was definitely scratched. Obviously, Nash was scratched. Gabrick's already moved on. So I think the Rangers are definitely in the rebuild, Peter, and I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. But with Nick Holden's already 30, so he's not very young anymore. And again, he is a UFA, so the Rangers do acquire some stuff. But yeah, I think Nick Holden's actually a pretty smooth deal for the Bruins, and hopefully he can solidify in the Bruins' back end for the playoffs. And not looking too good for a team like the Maple Leafs. So we'll see what happens there if they got to play the Bruins in the playoffs. Montreal trades Yerabek for a fifth-round pick. We're going to talk about that later. Of course, Coyotes acquire Kumper.
And the Kings, goalie swap in the desert. We'll get to that later, too.
Yeah.
But, Peter, what do you think of this Frank Vatrano trade? He's leaving Boston to Florida for just a third-round pick. The kid, he's got a lot of talent. I feel like they definitely should have got more for him.
I think we're talking similar to the Nick Holden scenario. If you're not playing them enough, especially a guy like Vatrano, who could score more goals, if he's not getting the ice time, then he won't score goals. And that's why they only got a third-round pick. I think they could have easily gotten a second and prospect if Vatrano had the ice time to score more than like 20 goals or more.
Exactly. He hasn't been able to fit into that lineup, and rightfully so. Boston's a solid team. I mean, they're making waves in the East right now. They're probably the hottest team in the league. I think they are the hottest team in the league, actually, since the All-Star break. So it's tough to crack that lineup, and now he gets to go, Frank Vatrano, that is, he gets to go to Florida, maybe rejuvenate his career a little bit, and I think that works out well for everybody. And a third-round pick won't hurt the Bruins, especially seeing how they had to give up the third-rounder to get Nick Holden.
Yeah, Vatrano will get more ice time in Florida, hopefully, and showcase what he has. All right, now on to a little bit bigger trades. The most recent two, we saw Grabner getting moved to the Devils, and the Rangers get a second-round pick and Igor Rykov from the Devils.
Yeah, that's. I think you and I have two different perspectives on this trade. I think it's great both ways. I think it's great that the Rangers were able to get a second-round pick plus Igor Rykov. I don't think I thought maybe just a second round pick for Grabner, but I mean, getting a little prospect in there too, another trading bit, or maybe a piece for the future, isn't the worst thing. But the way I see it is, Grabner's still a game breaker. He plays a lot of penalty kill minutes. And he's really fast. Now I know he's got 25 goals, and the counter argument is, 9 of them are empty nets, but he doesn't see all that much ice time. Yes, he's gotten cracks on the upper lines. I just think going to the playoffs, having a guy that's a little older, a veteran, I think it's a good fit for the Devils. I really do.
Yeah, I think if he plays with a guy like Taylor Hall and they both have a lot of speed and they can do some flybys against the opposition, it'll really help them. But at the same time, Grabner has like how many shorthanded goals and how many empty net goals. So he's going to be a great addition to your penalty kill. He might score some penalty kill goals for you. But again, a lot of his goals are empty nets. And of course, that's because he's flying by guys just trying to score a goal to get back into the game and tie it.
Yeah, that's the other thing with Grabner. He's not the most offensive guy at all. He's only got 6 assists. The 25 goals and 6 assists, obviously totaling 31 points. That's a little lopsided, especially for a player with 25 goals. Usually when you see 25 goals, you're expecting, oh, well, that guy's probably got 20 assists. No, not Grabner. He just kind of grabs the puck, blows down the wing, and he's got such a quick and a wicked release that he beats goaltenders with it. And I think if it comes down to a penalty kill in the playoffs, you never know. He could get on his horse. And remember, he is a veteran, but he's only 30 years old.
Yeah.
I know that's older in the NHL, but he's not quite done yet. Obviously, he's an unrestricted free agent, but this could be an audition to see if he's going to stay with the Devils.
Yeah. And, of course, the Rangers pretty much only acquire a second-round pick. Raikov's one of those guys that is a KHL player. He was only drafted in the 5th round, but he's playing to a potential of a higher pick. But it's a toss-up if he's willing to come to North America or not as well. So that's the other thing. So that's a bit more of a throw-in, and maybe the Rangers can get him, pry him from the KHL, but maybe not.
Exactly. It's the second-round pick. That's the big one there. Now, Peter, the next trade, the most recent trade, rejected, then passed through. I'm just going to kind of let you tackle this Penguin Senator fiasco with Las Vegas somehow involved.
So, yeah. So if you breaking it down, this is how it goes. The Golden Knights are receiving Ryan Reeves and a 4th-round pick of 2018 that was previously from the Canucks from the previous Ottawa Senators trade. So that's what Ottawa's shipping out. And Pittsburgh.
So Ottawa trades the Vancouver pick to Vegas.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Pittsburgh ends up with just the Golden Knights scenario with Tobias Lindbergh. And of course, in that, and I think that's where the Golden Knights are getting a 4th-round pick by accepting to retain 40% of Brassard's salary. That was the whole issue here, and that's why NHL was blocking the trade, was the whole, who's retaining the salary, right? And then if the Golden Knights, are they circumventing the cap somehow by not doing a straight back and forth trade between just the Penguins and just the Senators and using the Golden Knights as a team to just retain salary? So that's a bit of an issue here.
We mentioned this earlier, but how can this trade possibly not be a favor from the Golden Knights to the Penguins?
Exactly.
I don't really see getting. Okay, eat 40% of the salary. I understand they have the cap room.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to sign players just to make the floor.
Yeah.
Like Clarkson's been on that team. Clarkson's belongs to Vegas, just so they would hit the floor. So they have the room to do it, but just a 4th-round pick, I don't know. I mean, Ryan Reeves. Okay, you get Ryan Reeves, but out of everything going on there, I feel like there might be some future considerations under the table between the Penguins and the Golden Knights on this one.
Yeah, there's might be some handshakes going under the table right now. And to finish off the deal, of course, the Penguins do get Brassard. They also get Vincent Dunn, and they get a 3rd-round pick of 2018. The Senators end up with Ian Cole, the goaltender Philip Gustafsson, and a 1st-round pick in this year, 2018, and a third-round pick in 2019. So the Senators did pretty well for moving Brassard and a few picks. And the Penguins do a pretty good job too. They don't have to get all of Brassard's salary, so they fit him under that cap. And now they have a couple of centers underneath Crosby and Malkin that can fill in and help and still supply some offense on the depth forward lines.
Well, we've seen that from the Penguins before. They like to run with the three talented centers, and Brassard can definitely win a face-off. It's just, if it's interesting to me, if you backtrack this trade a little bit, it was Mika Zibanejad for Brassard straight up.
Yeah.
So you basically have now turned Mika Zibanejad, a guy that wasn't that popular in Ottawa. He's having a great season in New York, but he wasn't that popular in Ottawa. And you flip that first-round pick, a third-round pick. Also, you obviously traded one. But then Ian Cole and Philip Gustafson, I think the Senators are laughing right now.
Yeah, they're setting themselves up for potential semi-rebuild here. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in our top 10 list with some other names that could be moved by the Senators. All right, Chad, welcome back to the show.
Hey guys, what's going on? Good to be back again.
All right, let's get right into trade deadline talk. Of course, everybody's talking about Mr. Evander Holyfield Kane. So, where are the potentials for him going, and kind of what you see the Sabres getting back?
Right now it's weird. It's gone so back and forth with Kane. It's, a month and a half ago he was, the top guy out there.
Yeah.
And then the Rangers decide they're going to be bad at hockey, and then they flood the market with Rick Nash and Grabner, and here comes Mike Hoffman, and then here comes Brassard, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, you have a flooded forward market, and you have a lot of sellers and not a lot of buyers. So that's kind of hurt, the Kane front. But then you see these trades roll in. The Rangers got a second for Grabner.
Mm-hmm.
The most complicated trade in the world just got finalized a few minutes ago, and Brassard got a first-round pick out of that for Ottawa. So I don't know. It's weird. The original asking price reportedly a month and a half ago was 4 pieces.
Wow.
I think there's not a chance they're going to get that.
Yeah.
I've maintained the last week or so, I think the best-case scenario is a conditional second that goes to a first based on maybe how far a team advances, and then maybe a high to mid-level prospect. Maybe it kind of creeps into a first-round pick now, especially with Pittsburgh picking up Brassard. If Tampa Bay can't figure out something with Carlson, which would be insane here in the next 3 days, then maybe they pick up Kane because they're rumored to be interested in him a month or so ago. So I think it could work out better than I thought it would here for the Sabres, but I don't know. There's a lot of places you can go. St. Louis has been a team that's been talked about, but they said they want somebody with term, not a rental, but that can change come deadline day. San Jose has been in the mix. Philadelphia has been a team that's been tied to the Sabres. A lot of people thought that was Leonard, but Mrazek went there, so maybe actually they're interested in Kane. So there's some landing spots, and it'll be interesting to kind of see where he ends up at the end of the day.
Well, Chad, you look at the guy like Evander Kane, he's had a tough history in both Winnipeg and now in Buffalo. Obviously, we've seen his upside and we've seen his downside. You, being close with the Buffalo Sabres, would you like to see him back in Buffalo, or do you think it's time for the Kane train to leave town?
A reputation is hard to shake once you kind of have it. When he first got here, things didn't go great. And there's no denying that, off the ice and even on the ice, it wasn't a great start. But the last year on the ice, he's been one of the best scorers in the league. Off the ice, he's been better too. When I'm around him in the room, I can kind of see the change over the last few years in him, the way he treats the media, the way he acts in general. He cares. He does. A lot of people think he doesn't care. It's all about him, and that's really not his thing. And I get it. He has a reputation. It's going to be hard to shake that. But if the Sabres were interested in bringing him back, I wouldn't mind that. He has some chemistry with Jack Eichel. He's actually close on the team with Eichel. So that could be something that works out for them there. But that being said, I don't think there's any chance he does come back. There's been no conversation at all regarding contract, and I think the plan is to trade him, get the best offer they can, and then kind of wash their hands of it, and I don't think it's really anything about Kane's personality per se. I just think that Botterill and Housley may be looking for a player who gives them more, I guess you could say, defensively. Because Kane, offensively, he's going to give you 100%. He's going to be a hard forechecker. He's going to pot some goals for you. But I think they're looking for more of an all-around player, and maybe they want to use that money elsewhere with Sam Reinhart, who's a restricted free agent, and maybe they want to go after somebody else. And they have Casey Middlestat coming up, too, who's one of the best prospects in the league, so they can kind of replace him there in the next year or so.
All right. And then you mentioned Robin Lehner. Is there good chances that he's going to be moved come Tuesday?
I don't know. I thought his landing spot was Philly, but that's gone now with Mrazek. And it's really down to two teams. It's down to Calgary and down to the Islanders. I think Lehner is better than either goalie on the Islanders. And if he goes to Calgary, he's going to just be insurance for Mike Smith. The thing that's interesting about Calgary is they've talked about moving Gillies. So I wonder if maybe there's a Leonard-Gillies type deal there, and the Sabres kick something in, because Gillies, I guess, maybe have more potential than Leonard, but that's even debatable too, because Leonard has that NHL experience and a proven history of being able to be a starting goaltender in the NHL.
And that monster size.
Yeah, and Gillies has big size too, so they both have that huge size. And the thing about Leonard is he is that big size, but he doesn't move quickly side to side. He struggles with that. And also, he is maybe one of the worst goaltenders I've ever seen covering the post.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's been at least 10 to 12 goals where he just has a skate against the post, is kind of lazy on it, and those tough goals where he'll have a good night, but then you lose a game off of a tough goal because he didn't hug a post or squeak through. And, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of interest in him. I'm curious to see what the Sabres do because he's a restricted free agent, and they have their goaltender of the future here in Linus Ullmark in Rochester, who's doing really well in the AHL, so it'll be interesting how that shakes out.
Yeah. And before we leave you, there's some crazy rumors about Ryan O'Reilly. What's up with that?
Yeah, especially seeing how you say they're looking for a defensive player instead of Kane, and Ryan O'Reilly's the perfect package there.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly's not going anywhere. It's even I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Botterill was on a local radio show here, and in the un-Botterill way, the host asked him if there's any chance, O'Reilly could be moved.
Yeah.
And Botterill was kind of a close-to-the-chest guy, GM talk, and he said, flat out came out of his mouth right away, he said 100% not a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of realized what he said and caught himself. He was like, well, you never know if he knows. I'm not going to say nobody will ever be traded and this and that, but I think that was pretty telling. He said he sees O'Reilly as part of the future. O'Reilly has really stepped up with Eichel being out here the last week or two, so unless somebody comes in with a ridiculous offer, I don't think there's a chance O'Reilly's going anywhere.
All right, Chad, thanks.
You
go ahead, Connor.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and he also provides great leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right, Chad, thanks for coming on the show. Again, you can find Chad at diebytheblade.com on SB Nation. Of course, you're the co-host as well for BTB Hockey, right?
Correct, yes.
All right. Chad, thanks for coming on the show.
Anytime, guys.
All right, later. Hey, welcome to the show, Ian. How's it going?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Pretty good. All right, let's get ready into the trade deadline talk. So the first small little bit is, what up with the Jerabek trade? You trade him. He looked like a decent potential on the blue line. Maybe you guys have more guys in the back end waiting to take maybe that spot, but still, only a fifth-round pick for him?
Yeah, this one was kind of surprising considering that he was benched or he didn't play the 8 games leading up to his eventual trade to the Washington Capitals for a fifth-round pick. The conventional wisdom was saying that he was sitting so that defensemen like maybe Joe Morrow or Jordy Ben or David Schlemko were being showcased for a trade when it turned out he was actually being kept healthy for a trade.
Yeah.
Surprising move considering Montreal doesn't have a lot of puck-moving defensemen, which is what Jerabek projected to be.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a nice third-pairing guy with a second-pairing ceiling. Only 26 years old. He's a UFA come July.
Yeah.
Pierre LeBrun floated the idea that maybe Montreal circles back to him in July, but it was an odd trade considering they lack depth and youth at that position, and they will for the foreseeable future, considering they don't really have a lot of left-handed defensive prospects coming up.
Yeah.
Noah Juleson just jumped up from Laval, but he's a right-handed shot, so kind of a baffling trade, but obviously the return being minimal and Jurabek's potential being up in the air, it's not a life-ending move.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then what are the chances Plekanec or Galchenyuk gets moved, and what do you think are the pieces that Montreal would want back for them?
Well, I think Plekanec is a near sure thing, considering you look at the centers available at the trade deadline, Brassard being the big piece, and teams like Winnipeg missing out on Brassard might go after Plekanec a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a market availability thing. The value-wise, if Montreal could get a second-round pick for Thomas Plekanec, that would be excellent.
Yeah.
But I think that the market might push that price up a little bit higher. Who knows? Maybe he holds out all through Monday. We don't see a deal until 3 p.m. Eastern for Plekanec.
Yeah.
But I think he's just about done in Montreal. He might play his last game on Saturday. He might have played it when Montreal beat the Rangers on Thursday night. He had a goal and an assist in that game.
Good timing.
For Alex Galchenyuk, it's interesting because it seems like PK Subban Part 2 in the fact that since he's gotten here, it's been a will they trade him or will they not trade him? Just
Mm-hmm.
about every year when we get to this point, which can't be good for the player living in that sort of, unsure environment.
Limbo.
You don't know if you're going to get moved.
Yeah.
Apparently Pittsburgh was interested in him, which is curious because he's not, or at least the Canadians don't think he's a center.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's looking for a center, so that's odd. I don't think they're going to move him unless they get, a top defensive prospect back. Maybe even a young center, but why would a team move for a winger for a center? So Galchenyuk's kind of an interesting scenario. He's got 2 more years on his deal after this one, so, we might, if he's going to get moved, it'll be over the summer or closer to next year's deadline with moves like, the potential McDonough deal where they have another year left. Instead it's sort of a new age rental.
For sure. Connor?
Yeah, it's just going over to the leadership of this team. Pacioretty's been under some fire this season. He's only got the 16 goals. Where do you see him in the future of the Canadians? Are they going to hang on to him or just remove the captaincy, or how do you see that playing out?
It's interesting because I can't see a scenario where Max Pacioretty, after next season, is a member of the Montreal Canadiens, whether or not that's via trade before Monday, via trade over the offseason, or they just lose him to free agency, which is something that could very well happen. You look at the leadership of this team, obviously Shea Weber has been... The trade is highly criticized, and I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I've enjoyed what Shea Weber brings to this team, and obviously he means a lot to the guys in the room. That's the first thing anyone mentions about him. But I think if you're looking for a new captain, it would be nice to see them promote someone who's been with the organization their entire career. And there's not much, you won't find a better option than Brendan Gallagher, who's had an incredible season, putting up close to career totals for a while.
He's virtually doing it on his own, too.
Absolutely. I mean, he's playing on a line with Thomas Plekanec, who's realistically an offensive black hole. He's not the second line center he used to be. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with leadership. If Pacioretty, I don't think they've stripped him of the captaincy just because of the circus that would create. You can do that in a market like San Jose, where they did it several times to Marleau and
Thornton.
But you can't do that in Montreal. It won't fly. So I would imagine if Pacioretty's not the captain of the Canadiens, he's probably not on the Canadiens anymore.
All right. Thanks, Ian, for stopping by for our special trade deadline episode. And we can still find you at rabbithabs.com, right?
Yep, that's correct. Rabbithabs.com. Follow me on Twitter at Boisvert Ian, last name, first name.
Perfect. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Ian. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Clark, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, let's get right into the trade deadline talk. And the big name, of course, is Mike Green. He could give some team some offense from the blue line. Where do you think you see him going, and what could you expect back for the Red Wings from him?
Well, the team we're hearing a lot from lately seems to be Tampa Bay. There does seem to be a really good fit there, but my big fear with Mike Green has always been that it's going to come down to next Monday, and you're going to start hearing, "Oh well, he's a power play quarterback, and that's it. He makes $6 million a year. That's expensive. He's not worth as much as you thought he was going to be worth. He's going to be this year's Thomas Vanek." And so if he's going to Tampa Bay, and I don't know, it could be Washington, it could be Toronto. Those are the other two that come up quite a bit. But Tampa's been the one that has really gotten a lot of play this week. If you're looking at Tampa, the ask was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
I would love that. The Wings have had so many years without a lot of high picks that, let's get another first rounder in there. I couldn't tell you the last time they had 2 picks in the first round. But if it's not a pick, I would love Cal Foote, but I think that's a reach there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big reach, too, because one of the things we heard recently is that the Wings have stepped off of their ask for a first-round pick. Is it a second rounder? Are we seeing what I'm afraid of with him being this year's Vanek, and it's going to drop even further by the time Monday rolls around?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Well, an interesting guy on the trade block is, you were saying, Thomas Tatar. Do you think if coupled in the trade that you could maybe get that first-round pick and a little more?
One of the things I actually heard, so Tatar has been more linked to Nashville, and that was especially this week. The Wings played Nashville. Tatar had a goal, played really well in that game. So it looked a lot like an audition, but we haven't heard his name linked to anyone else yet. So I don't know if you put those two together. One of the things that you have heard linked with Mike Green and Tampa is Gustav Nyquist, who's a similar player as far as his upside and his salary to Tatar. And so, yeah, maybe you can package them together for something a little bit bigger. I'm afraid of what's going on with Mike Green. He's been hurt too, so that's another ding against his value. But maybe packaging him with somebody, if there's someone out there that wants both, is going to help get what the Wings want there.
And then on the Mrazek front, so he gets moved to Philadelphia. Get a couple of picks back for him. Does that make Jimmy Howard the clear-cut number one? Was that the right goalie to trade?
Oh, those are two very different questions with that. I wrote a lot of words about that today. Howard is a clear-cut number one. Jared Coro is not going to take that spot from him anytime soon. I don't think he's going to take it. I mean, next year either. Assuming Coro is even around in Detroit next year, Detroit would have to acquire a goalie from somebody in one of these trades to bump Howard, and that's just not going to happen. So Howard's your number one. He's the goalie of the future. Again, at 30-some years old, he is their guy for the foreseeable future because none of the Wings goaltending prospects are ready to step in anytime soon. And even if you go with Coro, he had a couple of great starts last year, but he had worse numbers than Mrazek. So if you're going to knock Mrazek, then I don't know how you can be looking at Coro as your savior or anything. But was Howard the right guy? I really don't think so. Mrazek over the last 4 years has had better numbers than Howard. He had an awful slump last year. He got knocked in the media a lot. I think there was a lot of off-ice stuff going on. It sounds like the Wings brass was really not happy with how Mrazek negotiated his contract in 2016. And I don't know what happened in those negotiations, but both sides came out of that upset. Mrazek should have been the starter going into that season. It was more of a 1A, 1B situation, and he wasn't happy. Everything fell apart from there. And then that leads to Mrazek being exposed to Vegas last year, and he's been out since the expansion draft, really. They made clear they had no intention of bringing him back. So they had no intention of bringing him back. Good to get something for him. I just really find it hard to believe that giving up on a 26-year-old goalie who had better stats than your 35-year-old goalie is the right move.
Since you're saying that kind of stuff, it looks like a little bit of mismanaging. How does Detroit media and Detroit fans like how things are going now with management and Blashill and Holland and everything right now?
Oh, Detroit media and Detroit fans are two very different things right there.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff actually starting last year, a lot of the stuff where you started hearing about, Mrazek has a horrible attitude and nobody likes him and all this stuff was coming out of the media. And it feels a lot like that was fed from the Red Wings brass. Saying, like, don't you hate this guy now? Isn't he so horrible? It's just kind of like poisoning the well a little bit there. But I think a lot of Wings fans are okay with the deal either because they had soured on Mrazek or because they've accepted that he wasn't going to stick around, that the Wings organization was done with him. So for whatever reason it may be, they're happy that the Wings got something for him. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's good to get something rather than nothing. And hey, maybe he goes on a tear in Philly, and they decide they have to keep him, and that the pick that's right now a single fourth rounder becomes a second and a third. That's what it could be. We'll see how Mrazek does and what that becomes. Yeah,
I guess we will see. Clark, thanks for coming on the show, and of course you can find Clark at DetroitHockey.net and on Twitter at DetroitHockey96. Clark, again, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Later. Have a good night.
You too.
Welcome to the show, Lewis. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
We're doing pretty good. All right, let's get ready into some trade deadline talk. The big name out there, everybody likes to see Max Domi. Where could he go, and what would you expect back for the Coyotes?
Sure, yeah. Max Domi is probably their hottest trade target right now. He could probably go to half the league. Half the league would be interested in a player like that. He's having a little bit of a rough year this year. I believe he's only scored 4 goals, and I think 2 of them have been empty netters. So it's been a rough year for him offensively. But I think he's still a good player. He's still young. He's only his 3rd year in the league. So there's lots of time for him to turn it around and improve. I think he'd do a lot better on a team where he's not expected to be the main kind of offensive target. He'd be better if he's like on Edmonton or a team like Toronto, where he can just kind of pass to a guy like McDavid or Matthews. He's kind of more an assist guy than a goal scorer. So he'd be on a good team. He'd be a good teammate on a team like that with established goal scorers. Not so much in Arizona right now, but he'd be a lot better on a team with an established goal scorer too. They could just feed on the power play.
And what do you think the Coyotes would want back from him?
It'd have to be a first-round pick, probably. Like I said, he's still only like 22 years old, so he does have some potential. He's still young, so I think that the price would be pretty high for Max Domi right now.
Cool. And then, so there's other guys like a Luke Shen, a Richardson. What's the possibility of these guys getting moved? And, what do you expect back for those guys?
Sure. You got Luke Shen, you got Brad Richardson, you got Jordan Martinook. They're all pending free agents. So they'd be rentals. There wouldn't be any cap hit towards the next season for someone that wanted to acquire them. They're all good depth guys. Martinook and Richardson can both kill penalties when we all know how important that is in the playoffs. Shen is, right-handed defenseman. He can kill penalties as well. He blocks shots and play a physical game. So I think he's definitely someone that could be a target at the deadline. There wouldn't be too much interest in terms of top draft picks. So I think the Coyotes would have to settle for maybe a mid-round draft pick, a late-round draft pick, or a lower-end prospect for one of those guys. But I do think they could get moved at the deadline, for a team looking to improve their bottom six, improve their penalty kill, something like that.
All right. Let's get right into the trade that did happen a few days ago. That's Tobias Reeder and Wedgwood go to the LA Kings for Darcy Kumper, and then you guys lock him up for 3 years. What's going on with really wanting to acquire him and then losing a pretty talented younger guy in Reiter, and then now you got a 1 and 1A situation with going with Ronta and Kumper?
Sure, we'll start with Darcy Kemper. He's been outstanding for the Kings this year. I think he's outplaying Jonathan Quick this year with his save percentage and goals against average. So he's having a good year in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're a lot stronger defensively, so he might struggle a little bit more with the Coyotes this year. But he's been a good, solid backup this year with the Kings. So locking him up for 2 years, that does give them some flexibility with Antti Ronta. If someone comes at them with an offer at the deadline this year, they could move him. But from what I'm hearing, they want to re-sign him and make him the number one starter for next year. So just in terms of acquiring Kemper, I think they just wanted a reliable backup. We saw this year how big of a difference it was in the beginning of the season when Ronto was injured. You had Louis Domingue and Scott Wedgwood couldn't really get the job done in October. So that resulted in the 1-11-1 record you saw in October, and that was kind of the end of the season. They didn't have any goaltending then. So I think they just wanted to enter next year with two solid options in net, and that's kind of why they made that trade. In terms of Tobias Reeder, he's had an injury at the World Championships over the offseason. Knee injury, had surgery for it, came back. He's kind of struggled this year. I think he only has, I believe, 8 goals. So that's kind of a disappointing year for him. He's been a pretty reliable option for maybe 16, 17 goals the last couple of years. So he's taken a little bit of a step back this year, but he's still got some speed. He still can kill penalties. If he can rediscover his scoring touch, I think that would be a good trade for the Kings. They're in dire need of scoring right now to kind of keep pace in the Western Conference. They're on a little bit of a slide lately, so they need someone to come in and to kind of keep things fresh in that top 6.
Connor?
Well, looking at a trade, Peter, looking at a trade that happened a little while ago, the Anthony Duclair trade, obviously he never really panned out in Arizona, but what do you think you get back for a guy like Laurent Dauphin and obviously Richard Panik?
I think Panik has been all right for the Coyotes so far. Obviously he struggled with Chicago a little bit this year, so they opted to move him. But I think he's going to be a solid veteran in that locker room moving forward. I think he's under contract for another year after this one, so the Coyotes kind of opted to move a younger player for a veteran in that trade. Duclair, we've heard that he's had some attitude issues throughout his career. Been a healthy scratch when he was in junior, been a healthy scratch with the Coyotes, and now I believe he's been a healthy scratch a couple times with the Blackhawks. So I think the Blackhawks might have expected more from Duclair, so it's kind of hard to tell who won that trade right now. I think it's going to depend on whether Anthony Duclair wants to re-sign with Chicago or wants to test the market, because he's also a restricted free agent after this season. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of salary he's looking for, especially after the struggles that he's had the last 2 years. So I think that trade could just end up being kind of one team's garbage for another team's garbage. Duclair hasn't done much this year, and neither has Panik. So I guess we'll see what happens, but so far it's not looking like a very impactful trade for either team.
Welcome back to Jablam Hockey, folks. We got a nice little trade list for you to tease you into trade deadline. This is a list that I came up with on Monday night, so some of the players have already moved, but we're going to focus on some big fish, starting with Rick Nash. Rick Nash, 18 goals, 28 points, 33 years old, but that $7.8 million cap hit. Do you think he can even get moved? I think he's going to have to move. I don't think New York is just going to let him walk. That's why he's number 1 on my list. But who do you think is a legit option for him?
Well, I think he can go to a couple of teams. Of course, a team like the Maple Leafs, they still have some cap space to play with. But for sure, we know the cap hit is huge. But the Rangers can easily retain half of that salary. So you're
if
only
not more. realistically. If they're going to try to trade him, do you think they might need to take more?
Well, you can only retain half max, I believe.
Right.
So they retain half, and then half of 7.8 is just under 4, and then you're only paying for the remainder of the season. So technically, it's only going to be about $1 million in cap space that you need. So that will give a lot of teams, a lot of space that could potentially get Rick Nash. And I really do think that the Leafs could be one of those teams. You could easily throw him on a second or third line, a good depth guy who can still score big goals. And a good thing about the Leafs is they control a lot of the play when they're doing well in the offensive zone with some speed and a bit of cycle. Rick Nash might not be one of the best scorers as he used to be, but he's a great guy who can cycle the puck and hold the puck down low and in the corners.
Yeah, he's also really good in front of the net, obviously, with his big body, and he's got a huge frame on him at over 210 pounds. So he's still a guy that can make some moves, and he still has that shot. As you said, we don't see him scoring as much these days. But the potential player that some people are talking about to move him for is also on my list, and that's James Van Riemsdyk. Now, we all know the Maple Leafs are in a great position, sitting third overall in the Eastern Conference, but either way, it looks like they're going to have to face Tampa Bay or Boston in the first round due to Bettman's new setup of the playoff format. So with JVR entering free agency, do the Leafs try to get something for him? I mean, the guy's got 25 goals.
Yeah, I think you look at it in terms of what does Lou want for JVR, and if teams are willing to pay that price, you move him. If Lou is looking for a young potential top 4 defenseman and a first round pick or something like that, you move JVR. You have to. If exactly what you want is coming back your way, you move him because you're going to lose him for nothing. And what are the chances the Leafs can be one of the best teams since like mid-December in the Boston Bruins and the best team in the league, basically the Tampa Bay Lightning, back-to-back in the first and second round in the playoffs?
Yeah, that's just not really fair. But when you look at it from, as you said the right price, a top 4 defenseman, I think a guy that fits perfectly with that description, that his team maybe isn't shopping but is listening to trades, is the New York Rangers and Ryan McDonagh. Now, a lot of people are turned off of McDonagh because of his $4.7 million cap hit, and he's still got 1 year left on his contract. But here's the thing that Leaf fans just need to take a step back and realize. You're not going to be able to pay JVR. He's going to want more than 5. He's earned more than 5. You still get McDonagh at 4.7, but it solidifies the defensive zone. You don't need to go out and sign a big fish defenseman, and you keep that $4.7 million for another season, and it's already in your back court. You can cut off some of those fatty defensive contracts, and McDonagh realistically is a player you're going to want to keep around in the future. So I feel if the price is right, maybe JVR in a second or whatever, maybe JVR in a prospect for Ryan McDonagh, I think that's a great trade going both ways because that solves the Rangers' goal scoring issues. You see JVR every night. The guy goes out and he puts up either some sort of spectacular play through his legs in front of the net or he gets a goal.
Yeah. All right, so then let's go look at the Leafs' defense. Right now, you have Riley, you have Hainsey, you have Jake Gardiner, you have Nikita Zaitsev, and then you have the young, what's his name? You got Travis Dermott,
Connor Carrick. I mean, there's pieces there.
So who are you pulling out of that maybe top 4 right now for Ryan McDonagh?
One of those guys. I would take Ryan McDonagh over any one of those Leafs.
So in
a heartbeat.
Okay.
I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't trade Morgan Riley. I would not. Don't. I'm not saying throw them in the trade. I'm just saying if Ryan McDonagh puts on the blue and white for any reason, he becomes their number 1 defenseman. He can hit. He can skate. He's great at shutting out the defensive zone. He can play angles, and when needed, he can play on the power play. But the good news is in Toronto, they don't even need him on the power play because of those young defensemen that you were just talking about with all those offensive upside. He really can come in and lock down the defensive zone and focus on defense in Toronto, and I think that would be a great fit for both teams. But you asked that question. I think a guy that New York would possibly want back with JVR, as I said, prospect. Maybe you go with Connor Carrick or Travis Dermott. Maybe the Rangers get a piece for the future with JVR, and Toronto frees up that space because you really don't want to get rid of any of those young guys on the Leafs back end.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you still got to make way for a guy to come in because they do need help in the defensive zone. That's a fact. If you can upgrade your blue line and maybe give away one of those kids that is going to want a bigger contract, it might be a win-win situation.
There it is. And of course, we also sent out a poll for Leaf fans. If you were Lou Lamoriello, the GM, of course, of the Maple Leafs, would you sign Rick Nash in the offseason for 1 year or 2 years at $3 million? And at the moment, it's still piling. People are still voting on this. But at the moment, it's 62% yes and 38% no.
Well, I think one of the reasons is if JVR moves, what better guy to come in and fill JVR's spot than a cheap Rick Nash? Not a $7.8 million Rick Nash,
Yeah.
$3 million Rick Nash. On a 1-year deal to see if he can do it, I think that's a pretty good idea. Nash can still pass the puck. He can still stand in front of the goalie and bring that presence. Obviously, he's not as good as JVR, pardon me, but he is still a great player in front of the net. So we put the poll up. I voted yes. Peter, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I voted yes. I think he just brings that leadership value. And a guy who's a much better two-way player than he was younger. He can still score some big goals. And again, I love his possession, the way he carries it into the net and in the corners. All right, let's go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, build on that leadership point. You're completely right. He's got a gold medal. I think he can help a guy out like Austin Matthews. He was the first-round pick. He was the face of the Blue Jackets for nearly a decade.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a good piece to have in the locker room. So I completely agree with you there.
All right. So Connor will tweet out his top 10 list, and of course, a few of them have already been traded. A few of them we've already talked about earlier in their interviews. But a few guys I want to talk about, and the big name out there is Ottawa Senators captain Erik Karlsson. Connor,
now, in all fairness, everybody, I'm not crazy. I would definitely have included Erik Karlsson on this list, but the thing is, it really only ramped up yesterday, the Karlsson talk. And now he's number one on TSN's projected trade board, and he's number one on FS1, Fox Sports trade board. So, obviously, this is a big fish. But, again, it's who can land Karlsson. It really is, because he is a Norris candidate defenseman.
Well, Connor,
pardon me, sorry.
You haven't been listening all season long with the whole I'm gonna go out and get what I want and everything.
I've been listening to Ottawa, but it seems like Karlsson has just been brushing everything under the rug.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like he didn't care about the trade talk. He doesn't care where he ends up, and I think Ottawa was still trying to work things out for it. And I think something must have happened behind closed doors this week where it's no longer, we're just going to try and work something out. Because as you said, we've been hearing trade rumbles about Karlsson all season long, and then suddenly at the trade deadline, his name jumps to number one on the list. So I think you're right. There definitely has been rumblings, but I think what's to happen for Karlsson to now go from, I just don't want to get my value in Ottawa's ownership going, and Melnick going, hey, we're going to work something out, to now he's number one on the trade. Something must have happened.
Yeah. So did you hear about the rumors with Karlsson maybe going to Tampa?
I heard a couple of rumbles, but the thing is with me, why? Why would Tampa Bay do that? I understand it's Erik Karlsson, but you have a young guy. Sergachev is playing so well. Victor Hedman is already back there. Strawman can keep guys out of the zone. And they just – I know that obviously Tampa Bay is looking for a defenseman, but overpaying for Carlson just doesn't seem like the right move for me. But I mean, what do you think on that?
I think it would be a great move on both ends. I really think Tampa right now is one of the best in the NHL. If you can
they're the
get,
best
if you can
scoring
get,
team.
yeah, if you can get Carlson for this year and next year, that puts you over the edge to be a top team easily and contend for that cup both years in a row.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that. And if you put Carlson on that back end, that's the best. That's the best. Behind the blue line, that's the best blue line in hockey and goal crease. I mean, there really is nothing close to that. It just depends. I don't know if you want to trade away everything to get him because, as you said, it's a good 2 years, but I'm sure the asking price, pardon me, is going to be more than what I think Tampa Bay should pay. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's Erik Karlsson. He could win a Norris at any moment. We were talking about Ryan McDonough earlier to the Leafs. Well, I would put McDonough in the top 8 defensemen in the league. Karlsson's easily in the top 3.
Yeah,
So,
I really think that he has a good chance of ending up in Tampa. I actually do think so. And if it means trading 2 first-round picks this year, next year, Sergachev, and maybe another prospect, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but the way I'm looking at it, Sergachev is playing like a potential future Norris player, like an Erik Karlsson.
I don't see that. Maybe you do, but
I think I'm not. Obviously, I'm exaggerating because Erik Karlsson's a once-in-a-generational player. But I think Sergachev is a solid quarterback at a younger price, and you already have him. And I don't think the need is necessarily there. I think you're right. I think it's a good trading partner if Karlsson does move. But just look at the salaries that they're going to have to take into account. I mean, Karlsson he's still making a fair bit of dough. You got Kucherov there, Stamkos there, Hedman's there. So there's a lot of big names there. And it could be a good couple of years, but in the long haul, they could run out of money real quick.
Well, I think Yzerman's done a great job in keeping those big names at low cap hits. And, yeah, I think...
I think Yzerman's done a fantastic job since taking over in Tampa Bay, all the way from the St. Louis trade down. He's handled every situation excellently on and off the ice, and if he makes the trade, I'm sure it'll work out for Tampa Bay and for Ottawa, obviously, because Ottawa gets umpteen prospects and umpteen draft picks, and then obviously Erik Karlsson in Tampa Bay would make some noise in that division.
Wow.
For sure.
That would be huge. All right, let's finish off. Again in Ottawa, potentials Matt Hoffman. Is it Matt? I keep on saying Matt. It's Mike, right?
Yeah, it's Mike Hoffman. Yeah, but you know what? The guy can score goals. There's no doubt. And if Ottawa's clearly, they're not making the playoffs. And if they can get the right piece for Mike Hoffman, it makes sense.
You know what? It doesn't make sense to me. He still has a couple of years on his contract. If they go and trade Mike Hoffman, in my opinion, you're trading Karlsson, you're trading Hoffman, you're totally exploding the team and doing a full-on rebuild. They have to do it properly then, I guess. But he's not that old, in my opinion, and he's a great scorer.
Neither is Karlsson.
But you know that Karlsson kind of wants to leave.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't think Karlsson wants to leave so much as he just wants to get paid.
That too. And Ottawa, it seems like Ottawa's going down and trying to save money, and they're really trying to save money if they're also trading Hoffman.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And you're right. It doesn't make sense for them to move both of them. It just doesn't. So I don't see them moving both. If one of them moves, I wouldn't be the most surprised. If Karlsson ends up in Tampa Bay, let's say, or ends up somewhere out west, it wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world. Mm-hmm. And then, but to lose Karlsson and then Hoffman, where's the future of that team? Like the immediate future, I mean, not the long distance future. The immediate future. Next season, who are you putting on the ice?
Yeah, you're trading Brassard. You already traded.
Brassard's gone.
Yeah, you've already traded him,
and Brassard's got 7 goals in his last 10 games, so he was streaking too.
Yeah.
7 points, pardon me.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I think I have a good feeling Carlson will probably get moved, but Hoffman, I don't think so. So we'll see. There's even rumors with Zach Smith as well. That'd be like maybe more moving salary than him helping out
Than
the team.
anything else.
But and again in Edmonton, they're probably looking at moving a couple guys, and of course a big name on the list is Patrick Maroon. And in my opinion, from what I've seen from Patrick Maroon, he's a great guy that you would love to have in the playoffs. His cap hit is low. He's a UFA. If I can get Patrick Maroon for just trading a 4th-round pick, I'm going to do it. You, Connor?
Well, you know what, Peter? The thing is, the problem that the Oilers look like they've run into this season is a lack of leadership coupled with guys that can't adapt to fast play. Milan Lucic is a great hockey player, but he can't adapt to the fast play. Maroon's a great hockey player, but can't adapt to the fast play. Now, he gets points when he plays with McDavid. I think you're right. I think for a playoff push team, 4th-round pick, yeah, I'd do that. But I don't know if a team is going to look at Patrick Maroon and go, that's the guy that we're going to go out and try to get. I think that's more of a late Tuesday deal coming up right to the deadline where it's like, okay, we have our team built. This is what we want. We need some more grip, and we need a guy that can bury the puck in the net. And I think Patrick Maroon fits in nicely there. For a 4th-round pick, yeah, I think that's a solid trade both ways, and Edmonton can reap the rewards there.
Yeah, I think they could easily get a 3rd-round pick for him too. You know, maybe more. Now
we've crossed over. I mean, I guess if a team, as I said, if a team really needs some grit, like look at teams that just get bullied around. And honestly, there's a few of them in playoff position. I don't think Calgary's as tough as they say they look like on paper. I think outside to Chuck, they're pretty soft. And that would be a division rival trade. You don't see that too often.
No, that's not going to happen.
So exactly. I don't see that fitting in. But if there is another team in there that could use some grip, maybe a Nashville, maybe like the Predators, they've got the young goal scoring. They got some talent. Obviously, they got grit on the back end. But just a guy that can bang bodies up front, that could be a good fit. But I don't know. A 3rd-round pick that's a lot in the modern day of over the last decade. I think draft picks values have doubled of what they used to be. Right, just the importance of drafting is now the new apparent NHL. So a 3rd-round pick, that's a bubble one for me. 4th-round pick, yes.
All right. You're leaning on the 3rd or 4th-round pick. I don't know. I'm fine with either way. I'd love to have a Patrick Maroon on my 3rd line, 4th line, or whatever, and then put him up on a top line every once in a while and help your top superstar center. If it be a Getzlaf or any other guy, he might fit really well with them and score some big goals. I think he could do it. All right. Let's do some Olympic recap. Connor, how did our men do for Team Canada?
Well, it's the three-peat. No.
Yeah.
Obviously, this team isn't Team Canada. That's a quote from you, Peter. This is not Team Canada. This is a bunch of guys that love the game, a bunch of hardworking, good Canadian boys that went out and gave it their all. But at the end of the day, I don't think that they picked Willie Desjardins and company did not pick the right team.
Yeah.
They said they wanted to be a tough team to play against. Congratulations. You were tough when you were close to the puck. It's Olympic-size ice.
Yeah,
you can play tough all you want in the corners, but it's going to be a lot harder to get to the corners when there's an extra 20 square feet. So I don't think that they set themselves up for success. As the Americans, on the other hand, they went all with young players, and they still didn't succeed. So I think both teams kind of
went too much one way or the other.
Tough. Yeah, I think Canada could have benefited from the help of some of the guys that they had on the Spangler Cup, like Dylan Secure. We had him on the show a couple weeks ago. Just some of the younger guys to add some speed to that grit, because everyone loves a gritty team. But the problem is when you're using gritty guys that are a little older, that can't really play up that NHL status against some guys that can chip the puck around you and burn you, That's exactly what's going to happen, and that's what Team Canada just looked a step slower than the Germans in that semifinal game.
And then going to the women's, great match, I will say, and congratulations to Team USA getting the gold. But I think that's where also the women were lacking, especially I think they came out really well in the first half. Yeah, people can get mad about some of the penalties. I don't know the women's hockey game so much, so the illegal hitting was kind of weird when the American girl ran into our girl and then she got the penalty. But anyways, what I didn't like was maybe the coaching moves. They really shortened that lineup when they went into late in the third and overtime. And we were already a step slower maybe than some of those fast American girls. And then our fastest girl, which by happened to be, her name is Fast, did not play in overtime. I don't get that. With the open ice and 4-on-4, how is Fast not on the ice?
I couldn't agree with you more, Peter. It's really unfortunate, too, because they were going for the Olympic record, 5 straight gold medals. That is 20 years of just dominance, and that would have been – it's just disappointing that you come a shootout away. We won't get into that. I think the shootout is a ridiculous way to end the gold medal match. Preliminary round's fine. For a championship, I think that's absolutely absurd and dumbfounding. The IOC should shake its head. But coming down to it, the Americans, you hit the nail on the head. The Canadians played all their older players, too, in overtime. And they were double shifting them, and they were dog tired.
Yeah, for sure.
The Canadians got out-coached in overtime, and then come the shootout, I don't think it should have been decided in the shootout. There were some great goals both ways, but you know what? Congratulations to Team USA, and also congratulations to Canada, because the way you can look at it, Canada still hasn't lost a game within regulation play and or overtime.
Yeah.
So,
they
lost in the shootout. Great, but so they lost the gold medal, but they still can say they haven't lost an actual game in 25 matches.
Yeah, it was. It's a ridiculous.
The Canadian women should keep their head held high. I didn't like the whole after the fact with the IOC forcing the Canadian team to wear the silver medals when some of the players didn't want to. I think that was a bit of a slap in the face to a team that was not expecting to win, because obviously the Americans have won it's 4.
All right, Connor, hold off here. 2 things. All right, number 1, Canada nice. People expect us to be nice, but you can't do backhanded comments like saying, "Oh, shootouts don't matter," or "They should get rid of shootouts." Canadians are afraid of being aggressive or making negative comments in the face of looking bad. So they do backhanded slapping comments by saying, "Oh, it's going into the shootout. It doesn't matter anymore." No, your team might lose in the shootouts, and that's why you're saying that. So that annoys me. That's one thing about Canadians, because they don't want to sound like they're being mean, but you kind of are when you're saying comments like that. Number 2 is what you mentioned, and that's looking up with little children, looking up to people accepting medals. They should wear their medals. No matter what, you get a gold, silver, a bronze, a participation award. You're an athlete. You've gotten to the fact to get to the Olympics is already an amazing thing to do, is to get the Olympics. Next is getting a medal. And yes, Canadian women and the American women both feel they're above and beyond better than the other countries in female hockey. We get that. But because you didn't get the gold isn't the right thing to do by not putting the medal around your neck.
I disagree. These are professional athletes at the end of the day, and they go all out for it. And you lose a championship game. Like, I'd much rather lose or win a bronze than lose for a silver. So, I especially with all the dominance that they've had, they were going for 5 straight. It's the heat of the moment. She apologized in the media after. I think obviously apology was needed. But in the heat of the moment, I'll side with the athlete on that. I totally agree. It wasn't the right message, but I will side with the athlete. And I'm not saying to the shootout point, I'm not trying to sound salty at all. I'm just saying I don't think a championship game should be decided in a shootout one way or another. That's just my opinions.
Yeah. Well, going back to Jocelyn Larocque's apology and silver medal, and I think maybe they attacked her a little bit too much. I will say that. I don't think it's that bad what she did, but I'm just saying that there's so many other athletes that are competing just to get to the Olympics and just to get a medal, that for those people and for children looking up to maybe becoming an athlete or an Olympian later on in the future, that's why she shouldn't have done it. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
That's a completely fair point, and I agree with you. But what I didn't mean so much to hinder that as much as just understand that these girls were going for a historic record, and that's all they were thinking about. And to have that thrown on your face, and then, to not have that thrown in your face, to not win, and then have the IOC come in your face about not wearing a medal. It's unfortunate, but yes, an apology was needed. She needed to apologize. It was the wrong thing to do, but after that disappointment, I understand it.
Yeah. I get it too, but, it is what it is. All right, that's it for our special trade deadline episode with a little bit of Olympic review. We might talk a little bit more Olympics next week as well. We'll review all the big trades, and we'll talk to some special guests about those trades. Stay tuned for that. And again, please follow us on Twitter. I'm Peter Bojarinov again, at Russia98. And Connor, you're on Twitter with?
I'm on Twitter at the Sports Tree and Sports with Tree, pardon me. And I just wanted to give a big thank you, guys. Peter works his butt off for this, and we're finally back up and running. So I just wanted to say thank you, Peter, and to the fans. I hope that you guys really enjoy the new revamped Jablam Hockey.
Yes, and of course, our website will hopefully be back up within a couple of days, and we'll put out the podcasts and everything again, jablamhockey.com. Stay tuned. Follow us again and on Twitter at Jablam Hockey. See you later, folks.